Senator from Preston.
Thank you, Mr. President. Sorry, I lost my place in the book. Oh. Mr. President, this repeals Article 1E of the West Virginia Code relating to the WVU-Tech Revitalization Project. The bill amends the legislative findings under Chapter 18B, Article 1C, Section 1 of the Code by deleting reference to the disparity in faculty salaries between WVU and WVU-Tech, adding the location of the campus in the finding relating to disrepair of infrastructure, and adding the legislative findings regarding the efforts to study, report, and set goals to revitalize WVU-Tech as an institution of higher education in Montgomery. Substantial resources still need to be needed to revitalize the WVU-Tech campuses with the goal of increasing enrollment despite the investment made by the HEPC, WVU, and the state. Lack of available state dollars to continue to invest in WVU-Tech. WVU's purchase of Mountain State University's Beckley campus, its proposal to relocate WVU-Tech to Beckley, as well as the approval by the HEPC of that proposal. The bill also recognizes a collaboration agreement between WVU, WVU-Tech, Bluefield, and Concord. The bill sets forth as an intent for collaboration between WVU, WVU-Tech, Bluefield, Concord, and Marshall University, appropriate public and private entities and local governments near Montgomery. It removes the specific language regarding collaboration in engineering programs among WVU-Tech. That actually was added back in as an amendment yesterday, Mr. President. Marshall University and WVU, and changes the language to refer to an open-ended collaboration among WVU-Tech, WVU, Marshall University, Bluefield, Concord, and the Osteopathic School, and appropriate private entities. It directs the WVU Board of Governors to monitor and take appropriate steps to address faculty salary levels. Under 18B 1C2, the bill removes the language requiring the WVU-Tech campus remain in Montgomery, the key part of the bill. Clarifies language regarding the WVU-Tech Board of Visitors, and provides that the section does not affect the independent accreditation or continued operation of the Bridge Valley Community and Technical College. The bill sets forth conditions in which WVU must continue to collaborate with county commissions of Kanawha and Fayette counties, the City of Smithers, and the City of Montgomery should it choose to be included. It provides for collaboration between WVU, WVU-Tech, Concord, Bluefield prior to required program review and approval process. And it requires the presidents of Concord, Bluefield, WVU-Tech to meet quarterly to discuss collaborative efforts. The bill also deletes other outdated provisions. Mr. President, I urge passage of the bill.
Questions on passage of the bill? Is there discussion? Senator from Fayette.
Thank you, Mr. President. Ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, I rise today to speak in strong opposition to the passage of House Bill 4310. I do not speak often on the floor of this Senate. I am respectful of our process and the time of others. However, today we are considering the closure of a college campus that has been a part of a community in my county for over 120 years. This matter is important to me and many others. For this reason, my remarks here today may be somewhat longer than normal, and I ask that you indulge me for a few extra minutes here today. Hopefully my annual head cold will not interfere with my ability to speak. This particular bill will remove the statutory language requiring that the headquarters for WVU-Tech be located in the city of Montgomery, and will clear the way for the closure of the Montgomery campus through the relocation of WVU-Tech to the Beckley campus in the fall of 2017. I am told by many that this is a done deal. The cake is baked and Tech is toast. However, I will remind this body that this great institution of higher education was established by the West Virginia legislature in 1895, and only this legislature can provide for the closure of the Montgomery campus and authorize its relocation to Beckley through the passage of this legislation. Mr. President, as I stand and speak on the floor of the Senate today, I carry with me a great burden and responsibility to effectively communicate to this body the interests and concerns of the many citizens of the Upper Kanawha Valley who will be adversely impacted by the closure of this great academic institution. To my colleagues in the state Senate, I need not remind you that we all have state-owned institutions and facilities of one type or another located in our districts throughout the state. As elected representatives of the people, we have a high-level duty and responsibility to protect the interests of our district and to advocate for the resources required to ensure the survival and ongoing viability of institutions and state-owned facilities located in our home communities. In this regard, I can assure you that Tech is every bit as important to the people in the Montgomery area as Concord is to Athens, as Glenville State is to Gilmer County, as Bluefield State is to Mercer County, and so on and so on. It is for this reason that I would encourage the members of this great body to sit up, pay attention, and listen carefully. Today is my day to stand up in defense of a school which has been a central part of a community for the last 120 years. It may well be your turn tomorrow to try to do the same. In our consideration of House Bill 4310, I feel that it is important to understand the historical sequence of events which have led to WVU's interest to abandon the Montgomery campus and relocate Tech to Beckley. My remarks here today are very similar to those which I shared in an emergency meeting of the WVU Board of Governors in Morgantown on September 1st, 2015. My knowledge of these matters come not from what I have read or been told, but rather from what I have experienced and lived in dealing directly with these matters in the past 20 years. Prior to 1996, West Virginia Institute of Technology was an independent, standalone baccalaureate institution with a diverse academic curriculum aligned to the higher education needs of students throughout southern West Virginia. Of particular significance to Tech was the Leonard Nelson School of Engineering, considered by many as being one of the finest small engineering schools in the nation, as measured by its consistently upper-tier ranking among peer institutions of similar size. As evidenced by the professional success of its many alumni, you could get a world-class education in the field of engineering at Tech in Montgomery. In 1996, by action of the West Virginia legislature, Tech surrendered its independent status and became a regional campus of West Virginia University. At that time, I was employed as the president and CEO of Montgomery General Hospital and was also a member of the House of Delegates from Fayette County. During that time, I can recall several meetings that I had with then Tech President John Carrier concerning his negotiations with then WVU President David Hardesty relating to the potential positive benefits or negative consequences associated with this proposed affiliation. In the end, it is my belief that Dr. Carrier viewed the affiliation of Tech with WVU as a collaborative means to achieve certain economies available by means of shared resources with WVU that would be important to the long-term survival of Tech in Montgomery. As a true testament to the fact that WVU had a keen interest in asserting itself as the exclusive decision maker on all matters related to the operations and ongoing viability of Tech in Montgomery, in 2007, WVU promoted the passage of legislation whereby Tech became a fully integrated division of WVU. For purposes of our debate here today, What is important to recognize and understand is that for the past 20 years, WVU has sought and received what can only be considered as absolute control and authority over all matters related to the operation of Tech in Montgomery. Clearly, for the past 20 years, the relationship between WVU and its division in Montgomery can only be described as a tightly woven fabric of dependency whereby the future of the Montgomery campus was totally dependent upon the wisdom of the decision-making authorities in Morgantown. In this time period during which WVU sought and received increased levels of control and responsibility for its Montgomery campus, certain things were allowed to occur which contributed to the erosion and decline of the strength of Tech. Clearly, the aborted attempt by then President Charles Bayless to move the School of Engineering out of Montgomery in an effort to locate it to the Dow Center in South Charleston had the effect of destabilizing the student enrollment base on the Montgomery campus and created a climate of distrust within the community. During this same time period, little was done to retain the Corrections Training Academy then located on the Montgomery campus prior to its relocation to the campus at Glenville State College. In retrospect, while these and other less than prudent decisions impacting student enrollment can be viewed as having contributed to the decline of the Montgomery campus, all things pale in comparison to the cumulative effect and consequences resulting from the failure to properly invest in and maintain the buildings and basic infrastructure located on the Montgomery campus. The capital investment needs to address the serious building and infrastructure problems existing on the Montgomery campus have been well documented, but are yet not totally consistent in their findings. Briefly, in 2011, through the passage of Senate Bill 486, the West Virginia legislature sought to encourage a process to carefully review and examine a number of factors intended to result in a plan for the revitalization of WVU-Tech in Montgomery. A revitalization team of experts conducted a detailed study of the Montgomery campus and published its report on October 7, 2011. This particular report was later presented to the Legislative Oversight Committee on Educational Accountability prior to the commencement of the 2012 legislative session. While this report examined a number of areas important to the revitalization of the Montgomery campus, the capital improvements and facilities need portion of this report made it clear that the state needed to make a 5-year commitment of capital outlay that would total $30 million or more. The following observation included in this report was, to me, most convincing, and I quote, "A significant investment in WVU-Tech is needed. If the governing bodies cannot commit to a $5 to $7 million investment for each of the next 5 years, the revitalization legislation of 2011 will be seen as merely an exercise in futility," unquote. Following the 2012 legislative session, under the authority and direction of the Higher Education Policy Commission, another revitalization committee was organized to evaluate the needs on the Montgomery campus. In considering the deferred maintenance and capital outlay required to address building and infrastructure needs, this committee appeared to rely substantially on an earlier integrated facilities plan prepared by Sightlines in May 2011. This particular report called for the expenditure of more than $70 million in buildings, grounds, and infrastructure project needs on the Montgomery campus, including an immediate $40 million outlay for projects deemed to be essential. These initial estimates have since been inflated to include numbers in excess of $100 million for building and infrastructure needs on the Montgomery campus. In consideration of these matters, I am convinced that the initial $30 million to $35 million in immediate capital outlay is a more accurate reflection of the building and infrastructure needs existing on the Montgomery campus, and that the more inflated estimates have been used to justify the pending closure of the campus in Montgomery. Following the work of the Revitalization Committee, our legislative delegation was advised to pursue and try to secure approximately $7.8 million for proposed projects during the first year that was to be a multi-year plan to address the facility needs in Montgomery. Assurances were made that WVU had agreed to share in the allocation of funds for these improvement projects. With this in mind, our legislative delegation made multiple trips to the governor's office in an effort to secure a supplemental appropriation to begin the multi-year financial commitment required to address these needs. Obviously, in a budget climate where state funding support for our institutions of higher education have been substantially reduced for the past 4 consecutive fiscal years, our efforts to secure this funding commitment proved to be unsuccessful. I have chosen to address the building and infrastructure needs on the Montgomery campus because it is most often cited as a major element in the decision to close the Montgomery campus. However, what is often left out of the discussion is that when WVU pursued its affiliation with WVU-Tech in 1996, it is without question that it also assumed a high-level fiduciary responsibility for the proper maintenance and upkeep of the facilities located in Montgomery. While the building and infrastructure needs in Montgomery in 1996 were perhaps dated, they were most certainly not dilapidated. In retrospect, there is no doubt that the current campus conditions could have been mitigated by the development of a much earlier comprehensive facilities plan for regular financial reinvestment into the infrastructure on the Montgomery campus. In the final analysis, the lesson learned is that one should not seek to acquire what one may not be prepared to properly maintain. At this time, a word of caution to the members of this body appears appropriate. As we continue to cut higher education budgets in our state, we are creating a fundamental shift in funding where increased reliance on student enrollment and tuition will be required. With increased levels of competition among four-year baccalaureate institutions who are forced to compete in attracting a finite and shrinking number of traditional students, I am of the strong opinion and belief that the competitive landscape of higher education in our state will become increasingly more strategic and predatory in nature. As our colleges and universities continue to compete for market share, we need a traffic cop in the intersection to control moves of strategic interest. We may need to strengthen rather than weaken the role of the Higher Education Policy Commission in the oversight of higher education. With the closure of the Montgomery campus and the opening of the new school in Beckley, WVU projects that the Beckley campus is financially viable with an enrollment of 3,000 FTE students. To those members of this body, having institutions of higher education located within your districts which may be affected by the introduction of this new institution into your traditional market areas, a sage word of advice seems appropriate. First, recognize that students will likely come from the enrollment base of some already existing four-year institutions. Second, be cautious of such conciliatory gestures as collaboration as a means to achieve the lofty goals of higher education. 20 years ago, West Virginia Tech began what could best be called a collaboration, and here we are today. And finally, do not convince yourself as being able to protect your institutional interests by creating some legislative firewall of protection embedded in the statutes of the state of West Virginia. With our consideration of House Bill 4310, we are about to remove the final legislative language standing in the way of the closure and transfer of an institution that has stood for 121 years in the community of Montgomery. It is only a matter of time before speculation will begin on who will be next. In considering the decision-making authority of the Board of Governors of WVU to close the Montgomery campus in the fall of 2017 and move all students to the Beckley property previously occupied by Mountain State University, it is very clear that the move to Beckley is being viewed as being a turnkey solution to the more difficult and complex problems existing on the Montgomery campus. As confirmation of that fact, I was rather taken back several weeks ago when I heard the president of the Board of Governors of WVU describe the availability of the former Mountain State University property in Beckley as being manna from heaven. How easy it has been to trumpet the virtues of enhanced access to higher education opportunities for students in southern West Virginia as an extension of the mission of WVU, while at the same time permitting this same institution to abrogate or otherwise walk away from their commitment and high-level responsibility to the Montgomery campus and the citizens of the Upper Kanawha Valley. It is for this reason that I view our decision concerning the future of the Montgomery campus as requiring careful consideration of certain fundamental principles of fairness and ethics grounded in the core values of our state's great land-grant institution. Mr. President, throughout my lifetime, I have watched many coal cars and barges traveling out of the Upper Kanawha Valley as part of the process for the removal of the mineral wealth from our mountains. The long-established pattern of acquisition, extraction, depletion, and departure is something we have perhaps learned to accept in the Upper Kanawha Valley and the coal fields of southern West Virginia. Those words are worth repeating: acquisition, extraction, depletion, and departure. The downturn in the regional economy of the Upper Kanawha Valley and throughout Fayette County has spawned a climate of hopelessness and despair, as reflected in the belief by many that no words can be found to dissuade this Senate from taking final action today for the closure of the Montgomery campus. Today, the once great county of Fayette is on her knees. Our public school system is falling apart to the point where we can no longer properly educate our children. Our coal severance tax revenues are spiraling down, and there is an outward migration from our communities that I have not seen during my lifetime. And now with this legislation, we will be closing a campus located on 114 acres in a struggling community of 1,700 people, leaving vacant 668,000 square feet of building space left to wither away on a hillside overlooking a town. In taking this action, it is important for this body to recognize and understand that in providing for the closure of this campus, we will be doing so without the benefit of an economic impact study intended to assess the consequences of our actions on the regional economy of the Upper Kanawha Valley. In providing for the closure of an institution of this size, we need to be sensitive to the collateral consequences of our decision and the ripple effect that it could have on such major employers as Montgomery General Hospital and other businesses located in the Upper Kanawha Valley. While the county commissions of Kanawha and Fayette, in addition to the city of Smithers, have sought ways in which to buffer and mitigate the economic impact of the closure of the Montgomery campus through the executions of memorandums of collaboration with WVU, I remain skeptical of the ability of these collaborations in stemming the tide of the economic consequences that will most certainly follow. I do not consider myself to be an alarmist. However, in this instance, I consider a green button on this bill to be a detonation switch on the regional economy of the Upper Kanawha Valley. Seek to do no harm is an important part of our principled and ethical decision-making responsibilities. In making my final observations concerning this bill, they will perhaps be viewed as being more procedural rather than substantive. However, in matters of major public policy affecting the lives of people, procedure is very important. In considering the sequence of events leading up to the September 1st, 2015 decision by the WVU Board of Governors to close the Montgomery campus, I have been greatly disappointed in the process undertaken which resulted in this final decision. In early November 2014, I was notified that WVU was entering into exploratory discussions concerning the possible purchase of the former bankrupt Mountain State University property in Beckley. In fact, on November 6, 2014, WVU announced that it had reached an exclusive due diligence agreement to explore the purchase of the MSU property. During this period of due diligence, until the announcement was made on December 31st, 2014, that WVU had extended an offer to purchase the assets of Mountain State University subject to court approval, neither I nor anyone else in the community received any further information on the details concerning the particulars of this proposed transaction. Indeed, it was not until the minutes of the February 20th, 2015 meeting of the Board of Governors of WVU were published that I or anyone else had the opportunity to review the content of the reimbursement resolution which provided for the purchase of the Mountain State property. Obviously, this announcement gives rise to many concerns related to the future of WVU-Tech in Montgomery among community stakeholders and elected officials in Fayette County. Following our confirmation of fact that this purchase transaction had been completed, I and others undertook actions in an effort to gain further insight into the implications of this decision and its impact on the Montgomery campus. Despite our efforts to gain some insight concerning the consequences of these decisions, we were advised that such matters were premature and that no final decisions had been made concerning the disposition and future of the Montgomery campus. Following the conclusion of the 2015 regular legislative session, the mayor of Montgomery organized a community meeting as an opportunity for citizens to ask questions and express their concerns about the future of the Montgomery campus. During this meeting, representatives from WVU confirmed that they plan to operate dual campuses in both Montgomery and Beckley in the near future. At this meeting, the campus president confirmed that there would be a freshman class at both campus locations in the fall of 2016. In an effort to ascertain more specific information concerning the long-term future of the Montgomery campus, the Fayette County Commission held a closed-door session with elected officials and representatives from WVU on May 27, 2015 at the Fayette County Courthouse. Again, at this meeting, WVU representatives gave certain assurances concerning the short-term plan to operate dual campuses in both Beckley and Montgomery, but were again advised that no final decision had been made concerning the long-term future of the Montgomery campus. Finally, on July 28, 2015, I traveled to Morgantown to meet with the president of WVU and his top administrators in an effort to ascertain information concerning the long-term future of the Montgomery campus. Again, during this meeting, I was advised that no final decisions had been made. On August 26, 2015, I was notified that a special meeting of the Board of Governors of WVU had been scheduled for 12 noon on Tuesday, September 1st in Morgantown to discuss the future of WVU-Tech in Montgomery. I was further advised that there would be a meeting with area legislators at the home of the campus president on Monday, August 21st at 2 p.m. Indeed, shortly after 2 p.m. on that date, I and others learned for the very first time that it would be the intention of WVU to proceed with the permanent closure of the Montgomery campus in the fall of 2017 and to transfer all academic programs to the Beckley campus. At 12 noon on the following day, I and others were allowed to offer brief public comment concerning the closure of the Montgomery campus prior to the actions by that board to render a final decision to close the Montgomery campus. I was greatly disappointed to see that the Board of Governors did not even choose to adjourn this meeting for purposes of deliberation, but rather proceeded to immediately enact a resolution providing for the closure of the campus. Mr. President, what I have described today is an accurate chronology of the events that I and others and what we did to gain some knowledge and insight into the important decision-making processes required for determining the future of Tech in Montgomery. In lieu of any open public dialogue or discussion concerning the future of the Montgomery campus, it would appear that these matters of great public importance were made the product of closed-door discussions held during executive session meetings of the WVU Board of Governors. Mr. President, my lifetime and lifelong experience in dealing with important matters of public policy has taught me the importance of procedural regularity and transparency in those decision-making processes involving matters of high public interest and concern. Most certainly, the future fate of a 120-year-old institution of higher education and the impact of a closure decision on the regional economy of our state is well deserving of high levels of transparency and procedural regularity necessary to ensure the integrity of this process. As we all know, in our decision-making process, we have an important responsibility to see that all issues are properly vetted and that interested stakeholders who are impacted by our decisions are accorded the opportunity to be heard. To my fellow senators, I would assert that this important consideration related to the closure of WVU-Tech in Montgomery has been shrouded in secrecy and has been totally lacking in the transparency required to lend some legitimacy to the final act under our consideration today. Decisions concerning the purchase of the Beckley property and the abandonment of the Montgomery campus were not made the subject of open public dialogue, nor was this process in any way overseen by the Higher Education Policy Commission. When there is a public perception that the process is tainted, any public policy decision emanating from such fundamentally flawed processes must also be seen as being illegitimate in their end. In conclusion, Mr. President, and I know you're glad to hear that, I stand before this Senate today asking that we reject House Bill 4310 at this time. Under the provisions of this bill, WVU seeks the removal of language from our code which requires that the headquarters of WVU-Tech remain in Montgomery. In 2006, through the passage of House Bill 4690, WVU-Tech in Montgomery was made a fully integrated division of West Virginia University. This higher level of integration gave WVU the authority it is now exercising through its Board of Governors to close the Montgomery campus and move Tech to Beckley. As part of this legislation in 2006, specific language was included within that bill guaranteeing that the headquarters for Tech would remain in Montgomery. This assurance and language was provided for in this bill for the express purpose of reassuring local citizens and other stakeholders that WVU-Tech would not be moved from Montgomery to some other location. Therefore, should we pass House Bill 4310 today, we will be reneging on an important promise made in 2006. Finally, Mr. President, in consideration of my responsibilities to WVU-Tech on the floor of this great body today, the words of Dylan Thomas come to mind. Do not go gentle into the good night. Rage, rage against the dying of the light. The current timeline for the closure of the Montgomery campus is the fall of 2017, not the fall of 2016. Indeed, a freshman class will begin on the Montgomery campus this fall, and students will remain on campus as part of the teach-out plan through the 2017 academic year. In our consideration of this bill today, it is important to understand that we have established educational and economic development collaboratives which have not had the chance to meet. It concerns me greatly that we undertake action to permanently close a major institution in the Upper Kanawha Valley without the benefit of an economic impact study. And finally, we will be making a final decision in this matter while a civil suit challenging this closure is pending in the Circuit Court of Kanawha County. I have heard it said more than once this session that we need not engage in picking winners and losers on the floor of this Senate. Passage of this legislation now will entirely compromise and destroy the cause of action for this civil litigation. We need not turn the lights out on WVU-Tech in Montgomery on this day at this hour. Rather, I am of the strong opinion and belief that it would be far more prudent to consider this permanent closure decision next year rather than now. In voting no on this legislation, I am of the opinion that WVU will still be able to proceed with the opening of the Beckley campus in the fall of 2016 should they choose to do so. Indeed, if this legislation is necessary, our ability to discern the wisdom of our decision will be much clearer next year when the legislature reconvenes next January. To defer our action, we would most likely have the benefit of an economic impact study which could be used to more accurately measure the consequences of our action. We will accord those educational and economic development collaboratives established through this legislation the opportunity to voluntarily meet and gauge the effectiveness of their efforts prior to proceeding with this matter. To defer our action on this matter would enable the Circuit Court of Kanawha County to properly consider and render a final decision on the civil action currently pending before the court. I would submit to you that it is never a good practice for us to preempt our courts by making changes to the law upon which parties to actions rely. And finally, to defer our actions would permit processes to proceed to hopefully identify possible alternative usages for those facilities prior to the closure of the Montgomery campus. When we enter this chamber and vote as we must, I understand and greatly respect this process. For those who can join me on this no vote, I thank you. For those who must support this legislation, I understand. To the many friends of WVU-Tech and the citizens of the Upper Kanawha Valley, I apologize if I have been unable to find the words to convince others of what I know to be true. However, at the end of the day, I hope that it can be said that the senator from Fayette stood up and railed and bellowed in defense of West Virginia Tech in Montgomery. Mr. President, I urge the defeat of this legislation.
Is there further discussion? The senator from Greenbrier.
Thank you, Mr. President. I cannot say the words that the senator from Fayette said, my colleague. But I do want to speak to the bill in front of us this day. It's a bill that should make all of us very sad for the history of a fine school. It's a bill that should make all of us very sad for the history of a town. It should make all of us very sad for a region of this state. The outcome of this legislation, if it passes, is in some ways the story of what's taking place in all of southern West Virginia. By passing this bill, we are saying that we have forgotten the roles played by regions, particularly in the South, to create what was once a great economic engine for the state of West Virginia. Passage of this bill is powerfully saying that the contributions of those folks of yesterday mean nothing to us today. It becomes a story of not what have you done for us historically, but what are you doing for us now? Allow me to be personal. When I was a young boy in Miss Jones' Sunday school class, one of my favorite lessons that we studied, I can remember sitting in her class and listening to her, was the young shepherd boy David and the mighty giant Goliath the Philistine. David, as you know the story, was a young boy who came out to visit his brothers on the army, and they were being taunted by a 9-foot giant named Goliath from the Philistines, and David couldn't understand that, so he went out to challenge this giant. They offered him a shield and an armor. He refused it. He only took with him his sling and a few rocks. As the giant laughed and taunted, David loaded his sling and twirled it around his head and landed a deadly blow, killing the giant on the field. I loved that story as a boy. I have to admit that probably we were thinking how we could get a sling like that to kill a few things maybe, but it wasn't the violence that became important. It was a story of the little guy having a chance against the giant. In many ways, that's the story that has inspired many of us here today to face daunting odds to try and make fairness in the world where we live. My friends, I am saddened today that we are changing the truth of that wonderful story of the little guy winning the battle if we vote yea on the legislation before us. The little guys are the Golden Bears of West Virginia Tech. The little guys are the people in Montgomery and Upper Kanawha Valley, the people who have educated the young men and women of this great state for 120 years. You know the history of what has taken place. I won't relay that again. The senator from Fayette has done a mighty job telling you that. The real defeat of this small David of the South took place in 2015 when WVU found that it was cheaper, supposedly, to move to the defunct Mountain State University campus rather than to continue to work with the people of Montgomery. I won't even talk of neglect and deferred maintenance. You heard that from the senator from Fayette. By voting for this bill today, you're saying that David is defeated in our presence. The giant wins. Now, the giant will say that when they go to victory, they are actually saving West Virginia Tech as it moves to the defunct Mountain State campus. But is that true? Look at the fact sheet that you have on your desk. Read those facts. I will tell you the small town of Montgomery has nurtured and helped shape Tech in the last 120 years. And by passage of this bill, we're saying that is forgotten. The face of a proud college is no more. Leave no doubt, Montgomery loses. They no longer have their school, which was the life of that community. These Davids are left with empty parking lots and shuttered buildings. They're left with uncertainty and darkness. I went to the public meetings and heard the reasons some gave for leaving this little town. But in the end, what I heard being said by many was, you have nothing to offer us today. So we're moving to what appears to be greener pastures. We are strong enough and we are big enough. And you, the little David of Montgomery and the Upper Kanawha Valley, you are of no importance to us as a place, as a school. I say to every small college and every university in this state, could you be next? Mr. President, when will Athens be wrong for Concord University? When will Bluefield not offer enough for Bluefield State? When will Glenville State be told that Central West Virginia no longer matters? It's a sad day for us who believe in the underdogs, who believe in the Davids, if this bill passes. Where do we go? What do we do? As a community, we are saddened. We are made to wonder if our contributions from the past and even the present even matter to the rest of the state. I urge you today to please press red on this issue. Say today that you stand with the underdogs of this world. They need you today. Thank you.
Further discussion. Senator from Raleigh.
Thank you, Mr. President, for allowing me the opportunity to speak in support of this bill. The City of Beckley welcomes with open arms West Virginia Tech and West Virginia University. For many years, individuals in my service area have supported community and technical colleges such as New River, higher education institutions such as Concord University, as well as my alma mater, Bluefield State College. There is room in Beckley for all these institutions to collaborate and find ways to improve the lives of our citizens. The goal of this new endeavor by West Virginia University is to give more citizens a chance to improve their skills and knowledge and find work in West Virginia. I know that West Virginia University wants to offer education close to home and bring new students into Beckley. This will do two things. It will improve our local economy and promote this part of the state as a destination for students who are seeking quality educational services. There are so many positive attributes about my community that will attract new people into Beckley. I'm confident that the existing services will be utilized and any new services will be added to ensure the success of this new venture with West Virginia University. The sky's the limit for this monumental change that puts Beckley on the map with West Virginia University and the West Virginia Tech team. I can assure this body that the Beckley community and the surrounding area businesses will be an engaged partner as we work to create a smooth transition for the university into Beckley. Words cannot express how grateful I am for a chance to advance an agenda to bring education and economic development into the 9th District. Although I understand the concerns of a few senators from other areas of the state that are impacted, we as a body cannot impede the university from taking steps which will stabilize West Virginia Tech by moving it to a more appropriate location so the student body can grow and flourish. I urge passage.
Further discussion. Senator from Nicholas.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm a 1980 graduate of West Virginia Institute of Technology. And in 1996, West Virginia University acquired West Virginia Institute of Technology and brought it under its umbrella. I didn't like it then, quite honestly. And through the mid to late 90s, I didn't like the fact that I saw many of the good professors in the engineering program at West Virginia Tech leave. Why? Because Marshall University saw the vision. They also knew where the quality educators were for the engineering program. And they began taking several of the professors from West Virginia Tech to Marshall. West Virginia Tech has continued to survive. It continues to provide a strong, vibrant engineering program. They've got good professors. They've got respectable facilities. Are they state-of-the-art? Certainly not. Why? Because the legislature has never felt incumbent to plow money into West Virginia Institute of Technology. Mr. President, I'll tell you that I went back and looked through the historical data over the last several years. It hurts. It hurts me to know what my legislature has done to my college, to my West Virginia Tech, especially over the last 7 years. We've not increased any funding to West Virginia Tech, though West Virginia Tech's study resolution study work back in 2007 and again some additional work in 2011 said you got to put some money into us to allow us to survive, to allow us to, more importantly, rather than just surviving, to thrive. We didn't do it. I went back and looked at some of the demographics, and the one thing I wanted to know is where, of the counties that surround West Virginia Tech, are they supporting West Virginia Tech? In 1989, of Fayette, Kanawha, Nicholas, and Clay counties, we contributed 58% to the population of West Virginia Tech. In 2008, 65%. 30% came from Fayette County, 30% came from Kanawha County, 3 from Nicholas, and 2 from Clay. In 2012, that number had fallen to 44%. 15% from Fayette County, 24% from Kanawha County. Nicholas and Clay remained unchanged. Today, Fayette County students in that population at West Virginia Tech composes only 10%. Kanawha County, 18%. In total, only 32% from those 4 counties. When I went to school at West Virginia Tech, there was a large number of people that traveled from the Kanawha Valley, and we commuted. I commuted from Nicholas County down. There was about 5 or 6 of us. There were about 24 people that I knew of here in the Kanawha Valley that commuted every day up to West Virginia Tech. Why? Because they knew the value of West Virginia Tech. Unfortunately, the demographics have changed. The opportunities have changed. The situation has changed. This pains me more than you will ever want to know. But I want you to know something. I want to see West Virginia Tech not just survive for another year or 2 years at the campus in Montgomery. It's not about moving from Montgomery to Beckley. But I do believe we need to preserve the institution of West Virginia University Institute of Technology. From what I've seen thus to date, if we don't pass this legislation right here, right now, by pushing the green button, in about a year from now, maybe 2, we're going to be passing legislation that completely obliterates. Why? Because they can't survive. They've indicated that they need a population of 1,800 to survive. Right now, they're running 11 to 1,200 students. It's unfortunate that we're at this crossroads. It's an unfortunate situation, Mr. President. I wish we didn't have to do this. I wish I didn't have to do this. But West Virginia Tech, based on what we do here right now, has the opportunity to thrive. I urge passage.
Further discussion? Further discussion? If not, the question for the Senate, shall the bill pass? All those in favor vote yea. Those opposed vote nay. The clerk prepare the machine. Has every member voted? If so, the clerk close the machine. Ascertain the results on this question. 22 yeas, 12 nays, 0 absent, not voting. More than a majority of those present and voting having voted in the affirmative, declare the bill passed.